Hello, I'm Jesse Kraja from the Community Foundation of Tampa Bay, and I'm proud to present our very first virtual sneak peek. We were fortunate to have some in-person sneak peeks earlier this week and share with some of our donors some of our very best proposals, and you're going to have the opportunity to see 55 of those very good proposals. I encourage you at this point, don't look at them yet. Wait till after we've had a chance to go through the presentation. Before we start any of our work here at the Community Foundation, we like to start with the why. Too often, these kinds of processes can be very task-oriented, and we don't want to get folks lost in the momentum of task to task. We want to start back with the why we do our work. And our most important perspective on that is our mission statement. And here at the Community Foundation of Tampa Bay, our mission is to build a better community through creative philanthropy, vision, and leadership. And how we do that relates to our value proposition. We serve as a connector, a collaborator, a convener, and a catalyst within the community in order to create positive change and build a better community here in Tampa Bay. One of our biggest changes that we've had this year is our move to 5 defined focus areas. Historically, the Community Foundation has focused in general areas, things such as education, health and human services, arts and culture. This year we did a deep dive look into the research in our community and narrowed it down to 5 different areas that we think are the biggest focus for improvement within our community. Those are community vibrancy, economic mobility, empowering women and girls, mental well-being, and positive education. In just a few minutes, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into some of that information. One thing that gave us guidance on this work is really tying these to community metrics. And if you've had the opportunity yet to look, I encourage you to look at the Regional Competitiveness Report. You can find that electronically at stateoftheregion.com, but there's information that was put together by the Tampa Bay Partnership in conjunction with the University of South Florida that's available on that site. It was co-funded by us here at the Community Foundation along with our partners United Way, and you'll find a lot of good information that we use to really drive what the focus areas were for this year. We think the community resonated a lot with those focus areas as well, and you can see from the chart in front of you that we had a record number of letters of intent this year. Last year we had 197, this year we had 278. That's actually up 41.1% this year, and the total amount of requested dollars was up almost 50%. You can see it's almost $7 million requested. We think this, in conjunction with some of the work that we've done to be very transparent about our process. If you haven't had a chance to look at our website lately, go up to our website, click the Apply for the Grant up in the right-hand corner. We spent a lot of time and energy redesigning the site so we could be as transparent as possible about everything that we do and how we do it, some of which I'm going to share in these slides that are coming up. So how did we get from the 278 to the 83 that we ultimately invited for applications? We have an intense process we go through. We had 6 of our professional staff here work each individually about 23 hours going through all of the letters of intent. We then spent 2 long afternoons going through that information and talking about our individual scores and any new information that we could share among each other as a group, as we're all intimately involved with folks out in the community. This ultimately resulted in a rank ordering of what the LOIs are, and then drove which 83 that we moved forward in the process to ask for full applications. You see some of the criteria there, and we'll work through that in just a few minutes. But I want to share this process is similar to the same kind of psychometric process that might be used when you actually score a standardized test, how you determine a cut score or a final passing score on those kinds of instruments, things like the SAT or a GRE that you might be familiar with. We followed that same psychometric model in our rating system to determine what those applications, those that would be further for applications, would be. We looked at things like quality and completeness, which aren't that different from the kinds of things that you would normally look at from a funding perspective, but we go a little bit deeper and we look at our strategy screens, collaboration, innovation, measurable outcomes, community visibility, and equity. We look at that for all of our letters of intent. And then for those that are within the targeted focus areas, we have some more specific things that we'll look at. Again, we'll share that information in just a minute. Let's dive a little bit further on the strategy screens. So we have 5. We actually have a new one this year under the area of equity, but the 5 are as shown there. Collaboration, we're looking for collaboration among nonprofits. We're ideally looking for partnerships where folks are working together in projects and leveraging the resources they have among nonprofits, as well as opportunities for collaborative funding, where potentially a nonprofit has already come up with a funding stream but not enough to do what they want to do. We look for those opportunities to co-fund alongside them. Our second universal screen is in the area of innovation. So we're looking for something that's innovative, not necessarily the first time that it's been done, but something that still fits that label of innovation, but is based on sound practice, best practice and research. Our third universal strategy screen is in the area of measurable outcomes. We're looking for outcomes that go beyond typical process metrics, an example of which might be a after-school program where we're just counting the number of students that participated, but rather the impact. How did this particular project impact the lives of those students participating in the example I mentioned? Looking at things like, did behaviors improve in school? Did attendance improve as a result of it? Did better grades and progression improve? So we're working with nonprofits to really develop much more accurate, measurable outcomes in terms of impact. Our fourth area is community visibility. We believe if we can pick a few really good projects, those projects can result in good outcomes. Then we'll have the ability to share those with other philanthropists and ultimately bring more dollars to the table and ultimately do more good. So we believe in community visibility for the project, visibility for the nonprofit, as well as visibility for the foundation. And then our newest area is in the area of equity, and this has been a big discussion from our board over the past year, so much so that we decided to add it separately as a universal strategy screen. We're looking for projects that impact equity populations, folks that are a low socioeconomic status and impoverished neighborhoods, racial inequities, things in the area of veterans or seniors, basically at-risk populations in general. And we're looking for organizations that are using inclusive practices with the idea that not everybody gets the same thing, but folks get the kinds of things that they need that are going to improve their lives. So this is our competitive grants process in a visual. We call it our funnel, and you can see at the very top there, we start with the 207 letters of intent that I mentioned earlier, and down at the bottom of the funnel, you'll see question marks. We don't know yet in the process how many we'll have remaining. We've started with those 278, again, just under $7 million. Those were due at midnight on November 22nd. We did our review through our process and let those folks know when the applications were due. You can see we had 83 that we sent out and had that notification in December. We had 82 of the 83 come in, so just under $2 million in the requests there. You can see what we shared with our councils. So we're going to just have a few less that we share with our councils because they're made up of volunteers and they have to look at those in more detail. You see when we get down to the donor sneak peek, we actually have 55. At the end of the day, we'll end up funding about half of that 43 that you see there. We started our council week actually last week, and we'll continue that process again next week. Our donor sneak peek week is this week, and we had our live donor sneak peeks a few days ago, and now our virtual will be the remainder of this week, as you should be getting this afternoon. But we have 55 of those, about $1.2 million total. We'll be going to our grants committee on March 12th to review and ultimately put the investment packages together. That will go to our board on March 24th for review and final approval. And then we'll have a notification to go out a little bit later that week, and within a few weeks afterwards, we'll be providing checks to those nonprofits that have made it to the end of the process. So let's get started. Let's look at the 5 areas. The first one up is community vibrancy. You can see on the slide here there's information about the purpose behind this, population served, some of our rational information, as well as this community-wide metric that I mentioned earlier that we're going to connect to and monitor over the time. There's actually 3 focus areas under the space of community vibrancy. The first one is arts and culture, but not arts and cultures for arts and culture's sake, but arts and culture that has an engagement component with the community. Our next area is environmental resiliency. And then finally, under community vibrancy, is collaboration among local residents, kind of neighborhood level collective impact. Here's our process flow, and we're going to do a similar process here for each one of our different areas. We start out with the letters of intent. You can see we had 51 letters of intent, about $1.2 million. We had 16 applications, a little over 300,000. And for your view for sneak peek, we have 11 in this specific area, and their total for those 11 is about $213,000. Here they are. Now, this is one quick way to look at them through this presentation. We're actually going to have a PDF slide in the email that you've received along with this link. In addition, if you like one of these different areas, you have the ability to look them up within the summary document, and there's a full-page summary for each one of these. You're probably wondering what those little colored dots are off to the left-hand side. If you look in the upper right-hand corner of your screen, you can see those dots allied to our 4 regional councils. We have the Tampa Metro Area Council, which is here in Hillsborough County, and that represents north of the Alafai River. The one on the very bottom in yellow is our South Shore Council. That's our oldest council here at the foundation, and they're south of the Alafai River. And then we have the Nature Coast, which represents Pasco, Hernando, and Citrus, and finally Pinellas County. So those are how those dots align. So there's a regional aspect as well as a connection to our regional councils. Next up is economic mobility. Again, information there on our purpose, population, rationale, and metric. In this space, we're really focusing on post-high school education, and that can be anything from technical skills training. It can be career readiness, it can be apprenticeships, internships, industry certifications, as well as areas that might be the more traditional education when we think of certificates, 2-year degree and 4-year degree. Our process flow for economic mobility, again starting with letters of intent, we have 51 in this space, about a little over $1.3 million. Applications, we had a few more, 22, about 540,000. And we're bringing you probably the most in this space, still about 300,000, but there's actually 13 that are in the area of economic mobility. And there they are. There's the 13. Again, the color coding, and you can see this in more detail if this is an area that you're interested in looking at in the PDF that will be attached into the email. Number 3 is empowering women and girls. Again, similar kinds of information. With our measurement there at the bottom, we actually have funds that are specifically tied to this area as well as community metrics. But this is looking at things like safety and security, health and well-being, as well as economic opportunity. And it's really focused on at-risk women, girls, and their families. Here's our process flow for empowering women and girls. We had 52 letters of intent. A little over $1.3 million. Applications, 14 went forward in the process, just under 300,000. And for sneak peek, we have 10, and the total for those 10 is at 201,000 and change. There they are. Again, the color code relationship. This is an area that you would like to look more in detail. Take a look at the attached PDF materials. Third up is mental well-being. This is a very important area for us at the Community Foundation, and it has been a lot of discussion both in this area as well as what's coming up in positive education. You can see there at the bottom, 1 in 6 adults has some experience with a mental illness in a given year. We're real concerned about trauma in the community and the impact of traumatic experiences. And we all know that's aggregative. So the more traumatic experiences you have, the bigger impact it's going to have both on your mental well-being as well as your physical well-being. And you can look at things like the ACE scale, which you can look that up, the adverse childhood experiences and some of the connections associated with trauma. Our focus in mental well-being this year is on things like addressing addiction, addressing suicide ideation, as well as addressing the stigma associated with mental illness. And as we in a community can begin to have much more conversations publicly about that, and understanding how to address that and work with that more easily in the community. Here's our process flow for mental well-being. We had 61 letters of intent, just under $1.5 million. Those resulted in 12 applications, just over $300,000. And for Sneak Peek, we have 10, and that's just under the $300,000 number. There they are. Again, take a look at your PDF if you have an interest in this space. And then finally, this is actually, I probably shouldn't have a favorite, but this is one of my favorites. And it's probably being a lifelong educator, I have that connectiveness to the education component. Positive education is actually a cross between positive psychology and traditional education. It's focused on things like socio-emotional learning, growth mindset, mindfulness, and we also have a very intentional focus here on kindergarten readiness, especially on the space of early literacy, and you'll see that in a reflection of some of the proposals that we received. Here's our process flow. We actually had 63 letters of intent, 1.4, almost $1.5 million, 18 applications. They were about $465,000, a little bit more than the ones we've looked at this point. And then for Sneak Peek, we brought 11 forward, and that's $264,470. There they are. Again, take a look at your PDF for this information as well as more detail in terms of individual proposals. Before I share the book and complete my presentation, I had a couple announcements I just wanted to share. I know you're all friends of the Community Foundation, so you may have come across our brand new Community Fellows, Alexis DeVoe and Clinton Simmons. They're working with us in a new fellowship program. We'll actually have 2 Community Fellows from Stetson Law School every fall and every spring, and they're our very first, and they're part of our new collaboration with Stetson Law School that's called the Alliance for Advocacy and Philanthropy. I also wanted to share some more good news. The Tampa Bay community was recently recognized as a talent hub by the Lumina Foundation. This is part of our work with LEAP Tampa Bay. We're a proud partner of LEAP Tampa Bay and also serve as the backbone organization for LEAP Tampa Bay. If you're not familiar, there's some real good information on our website, as well as the LEAP Tampa Bay website. And we're a collective of educational organizations here in Hillsborough and Pinellas County, including partners around the table such as both school districts, both state colleges, HCC and SBC, Universities of South Florida for both of their main campus here in Tampa and their St. Pete campus, as well as government. We have the mayor's office in Tampa involved, Pinellas County government involved, as well as funders like Bank of America, Helios Education Foundation, and partners out in the business community with the EDC and some other folks. So we work together to figure out how we improve access, completion, and ultimately connection to workforce for education in our community, because we know that's so important. And the small grant we received here is really going to be a focus for us on working on those people in the community that have some college and no degree. It's startling to note that there's actually 10% of our population that fall into that particular area of having some college experience and not having completed a degree. Finally, ta-da, is the Sneak Peek proposal guide. So this is probably the larger PDF that you'll be receiving. If you open up the PDF, you'll see immediately you have a table of contents, and it is sorted by the individual 5 focus areas, so you can go to individual pages that have full page summaries on that of information for that particular proposal. We're also going to have a PDF that has the slides that I mentioned through the presentation. And finally, if you have any questions, please contact us. My colleague, Jessica Sykes, there's her email address there. We're happy to help you and make connections for you, answer any questions that you have, and really appreciate the time that you've taken out of your busy day to sit through this presentation and learn a little bit about what we do and about some great work going in the community. Thank you very much, and I hope you have a great